Welcome into Football and Other F Words here on the 440 Sports Network. I am your host for today's show, the EIC at SoBrosNetwork.com, NFL draft analyst for StackingTheInbox.com. You know me as Big Natural, Stoney Keeley, filling in for Zach Lyons today, who is off to win a barbecue competition. So best of luck to him. We're just alternating. It's the off season. I got a wedding in New Jersey one week. We've got a barbecue competition the next week. Mike, I don't know what you're going to be missing the show for next week, but I wish you all the best there.
Probably be childcare related, if I had to guess.
Well, I do. We've got to start by mentioning, of course, bluegrass beverages. There's never a bad time for a beverage, and there's never a bad time for a stop by bluegrass beverages. So be sure to stop and check them out and tell them that football and other F words sent you. Mike, how you feeling about rookie minicamp, man? There's some awfully big men out there doing some big man things.
As a big man myself, and as a fan of the big boys, this is exactly the rookie minicamp that I want. It's not for everybody. Look, I mean, a lot of people like the pretty boy quarterbacks and the wide receivers and the flashy positions, but give me the meat and potatoes, the big fellas. It is like fascinating to watch guys that big move the way that they do. It's just superhuman,
I kind of like that. Do you remember we went through this whole thing last summer where we were talking about, the Titans are going with more athletic pass protectors along the offensive line. And really that was kind of code for they're getting skinnier and thinner and more athletic along the offensive line. And this year it's like, no, we're going to get JC Latham and he's just going to go out there and sling this blocking sled all over the wet grass out at the Titans practice field. So, and by the way, I do think that I've heard more about blocking sleds the last week than I ever have before. But what are your initial impressions on the reports coming out about Latham at rookie minicamp?
It's a huge week for blocking sleds. I mean, what a glorious time for them. I think so. First, I've got to touch on the whole. Does JC Latham look like a right tackle? And I just think that this whole discussion is so kind of ridiculous on its face, because who gives a shit what the guy looks like? And I think that conversation is stuck in the old way of doing things, from the 90s and 2000s, where you had your dancing bear at left tackle and your right tackle was your big mauler. It was the Dave Stewarts of the world were your right tackles. That's not the case anymore. I mean, and we've seen that shift over the last 10 years, I think. And today, right tackle versus left tackle, even Brian Callahan said it after they drafted Latham. The skill set that they're looking for is the same. They're looking for the same skill set. It's just whether the guy can play on the right or left side. So I don't think it truly matters. I've been on this soapbox for a while now. And look, JC Latham is built like honestly, he's built like a guard, right? Like he's got the thick lower half. He's got the huge legs, things like that. But he's like a guard that's been just like expanded a little bit, right? So like he's not 6'4", he's 6'6". He doesn't have 33-inch arms. He has 35-inch, gigantic arms. So he's like a stretched out guard, which is really how I would describe like your ideal offensive lineman. Like he's just big everywhere. He's big. He doesn't have any, small parts, of his frame. So I think he moves well enough to play wherever you want him to play. And I think the Titans have said that. So I think what he looks like versus like what a positional prototype might have been 10 years ago just simply it does not matter. And we need to move on from this old thinking of like your right tackle has to be your big mauler. It's just not the case anymore.
Yeah. And I think it's, I feel like a lot of this right tackle talk is being driven by the media, because every time that Bill Callahan or Brian Callahan, anybody is asked about it, they shut it down pretty quickly. Like, no, he's left tackle. There was even a note from, I want to say, well, I don't want to missource this, so I'll just say that there was a note that popped up over the weekend that said all of his work over the course of this weekend was left tackle stance related. Yeah. So, I don't know. And Easton asked this in the comments too. What does a right tackle look like in 2024 in the modern NFL? What does a right tackle look like? Mike, do you have the answer for that?
I don't. I think it looks like a left tackle. You know, like, I think you want guys that can pass protect and run block and do all the things that you want a tackle to be able to do. You want a guy that can play on an island when he's asked to do so. I mean, Penei Sewell's a right tackle. Penei Sewell, there's nothing that Penei Sewell does that means he can't play left tackle. There's nothing size related with Penei Sewell that makes you say, well, he's only got to play right tackle because look at him. Just look at him. You know, like, what are we doing here? Lane Johnson, again, like probably the most athletic tackle in the NFL. Does he look like a right tackle? No, he plays right tackle. He just looks like a tackle. Like Trent Williams doesn't necessarily look like a right or a left tackle versus a right. Like he's just a really good player. He's big, he's strong, he's quick. Like those are all the traits that you need to play tackle in the NFL. And whether you play it on the right or play it on the left, it doesn't matter. I use this example in our group chat. How dumb would people sound if you came out there and said, you know, that guy really looks like a right cornerback, not a left cornerback. I mean, what the fuck are we doing here, guys? Like, it's just a ridiculous idea that this has to be this prototype of 20 years ago. So
yeah, I'm with you. Not really. I've kind of been over this debate from the night of the draft when Rand Carthon came out and basically said we drafted him to be left tackle. I looked at that and said, okay, he's going to be the left tackle, and that's it. But here we are, you know, a couple of weeks later, and we're still having to address this stuff. And I just thought it's so funny. It was in one of Paul Kaharski's pieces at paulkaharski.com, where you can also find all of Mike's work as well, that he kind of compiled Bill Callahan, his first appearance with the media. And somebody asked him about the confidence in moving him from right to left. And his response was just fine. I'm fine. It's like, that's it. Everybody in the building is treating this like he's the left tackle, but it's everybody outside of the building that keeps talking about it like, oh no, I don't know. He looks like a right tackle to me. So it doesn't make sense. I mean, they're telling us he's the left tackle. We should at some point just take them at their word for it, or we're just going to completely ignore that and just keep throwing these questions at him. I don't know. Are you concerned at all that JC Latham did not push back the 380-pound blocking sled on his first rep?
No, I'm not. And I think, you know, to his credit, like Easton put out the video, and I think Easton's in the chat. So hello, Easton. Easton put out the video of Derrick Henry and his like first drills and as a Tennessee Titan when he was like tripping and falling over the blocking pads and stuff like that on the ground. And it's like, oh, well, you know, this guy's clearly a bust. You know, there's been the story about Tier Tart not knowing how to hit a blocking sled. And that wasn't even like some Frankenstein creation that Bill Callahan dreamed up. It's just a regular ass blocking sled that Tier Tart apparently didn't know how to hit, but that didn't stop him from developing into a useful, good player for the Titans. Sure. No concerns over JC Latham not having mastered a sled he's never hit before on his very first try. Yeah. And look, the Titans also put out, this was a really cool piece of content, I thought, a video on, I think they only released it on IG. I think, and I'll find her name here in a second. One of the social media people for the Titans put it out on her social media, on Twitter, but it's a cool video of like Coach Mack watching JC Latham. And this was from day 2, which the media, I don't think was, out there for day 2 of rookie minicamp. So this was the only clip of this that's floating around out there, but it's Mack commentating on Latham doing certain things over video of him doing those things. And then they show him on that blocking sled. And I mean, he picks it up and moves it like it's nothing.
Yeah.
And even Coach Mack's like, yeah, you can see the improvement from day 1 to day 2. It's pretty obvious here. So yeah, I think it's, the overreaction to that. Of course, you know, Jags fans, Colts fans, Texans fans, all jumping on that, trying to, you know, get some hope. It's just the exact same thing as like people overblowing these routes on air from Caleb Williams and stuff like that. Like, oh, yeah, these are practice reps, guys. Like, this is not define their career.
There have been a couple that have gone viral that I've had to like load the comments to see what people are saying to try and figure out why everybody's so excited. Like, why? Like, we're blowing this up. Like, what am I not seeing here? That
the Roma Dunze ladder drill comeback route. Yeah,
it's like, oh my gosh, look at this route. I'm like, oh gosh, guys, we gotta calm down here a little bit.
Ashley Farrell. Ashley Farrell is the name of the Titans media person who put this video out on Twitter, so you can check it out. Ashley N. Farrell on Twitter. So
there you go. A couple of notes. The first one on the blocking sleds. This comes to us from an account called Tip of the Spear. Now, Jim Wyatt tweeted the video of J.C. Latham's first rep against this blocking sled, and Tip of the Spear quote tweeted that with a little more insight on it, saying that it's the best sled on the market for developing hip-driven power and sustaining contact with the feet and hips. Following it up with a breakdown of the video that Jim posted. On the first rep, the player's feet and hips stay behind, so the sled doesn't move. But the second rep demonstrates the elite power of J.C. Latham's hips as he creates so much lift that the pontoons actually get stuck in the wet grass. So you're saying people overreacting to that first rep a little bit. And then I thought Paul had a nice little nugget in one of his columns about the rookie minicamp, adding, when he was in his stance and Bill Callahan rattled through a list of slight adjustments, he made them without overthinking. Mike, I'm going to echo something that Zach said on a football show on Monday. Kind of hard to not get excited about this rookie class after seeing just this little bit of action from rookie minicamp. Did you have any more like overall takeaways on J.C. Latham before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I think Latham looks he looks like a guy that was like built in the lab to be an NFL football player. He's probably carries his 346 pounds or whatever, what is it, 342 maybe, or whatever he measured in at the combine. He carries that way better than anybody I've probably ever seen at that size. Does not look like he has any fat on him whatsoever. I mean, this dude is a rocked up 342. So yeah, I think I'm excited about the process of watching him with Bill Callahan and even his comments to the press afterwards. Yeah, he seems like a guy that's excited to be learning from one of the best. And there is just something to the idea. And I think especially coming from a program like Bama, where like you were coached well at Bama, right? You get good coaching at Bama. Sometimes those guys are going to go to the NFL and get worse coaching, right? Like you're going from an offensive line coach at Bama, that has a ton of experience, like Kyle Flood, back in the day, and I'm blanking on who their offensive line coach was last year, but those guys are really, really high end teachers. Going from them to like Jason Hoteling, that's a downgrade in coaching. So like, sometimes I think there could be, hey, I've always done it this way. I did this. It worked for me at Bama. Who are you to tell me that it's not going to work at the NFL? There could be some resistance there. I don't think there's going to be any resistance with Bill Callahan. Just his track record, his pedigree. When he speaks, you better listen, because if you don't, you're an idiot. How many guys has he coached that are eventually be in the Hall of Fame, that have been to Pro Bowls, been selected to All Pro? Like, he's just got all of the backup and pedigree. The guy's inventing blocking sleds, for God's sakes. Like, he earns respect immediately. And I think Latham is a guy with obviously huge potential, and putting him with a guy that is going to immediately command his respect and can get the best out of him. I just think that's a match made in heaven. I'm so excited to watch him play this year. And I guess the other guy that like we saw a lot of was Sweat, right? So should we talk a little bit about Sweat as well?
One more O-line question while we're on it. There's been this idea that this entire offseason, the Titans wouldn't be able to check every box. They wouldn't be able to fill every roster need. As the dust is starting to settle a little bit on that first wave of free agency and the draft and everything, it looks like we're pretty set. And J.C. Latham, Peter Skoronski, and Lloyd Cushenberry from left tackle to center. And it sounds like they really are going to open things up to a competition on the right side of that line. Are you comfortable with that at this point with the pieces that they have, or would you still like to see them maybe add a piece?
I guess it's hard to say like super comfortable, just because most of the guys that they're throwing into those competitions either have very little experience or have experience that has not looked great on tape so far in their careers. That being said, it's not like we're talking about a group that's completely devoid of talent. I think Daniel Brunskill, for as much as I have dogged on him relative to Zach's opinion of Daniel Brunskill, I still think he gives you a decent floor at right guard, right? Like if he's your starter, like he's not going to be a complete and utter disaster. I think you could and should try to do better than Daniel Brunskill, but if he's your starter, like that gives you a decent floor there. The floor is lower at right tackle, and that's the biggest concern, obviously. But again, to me, like if JC Latham is good at left tackle right away, which I think he has a pretty good chance to be, you can be just below average at right tackle and still get away with it because you can help that side more and leave Latham, a little bit unprotected and let him do his thing over there. It'll be interesting to see how all that plays out, but I think MPF still has talent. I'm not completely writing him off, especially with Bill Callahan coming into year 2, healthy, not dealing with the suspension lingering over him and all that other stuff. And I like guys like, I think Sadiq Charles has a lot of physical tools. I still think Dylan Radins, if he's your right guard, that's not a bad deal. And even like Leroy Watson and Jalen Duncan, like your boy, those guys are going to be, they have physical skill sets that are worth exploring with a coach like Bill Callahan. So I think that's kind of where, like, I'm not super confident just because none of those guys have shown it before, but I'm also not thinking that it's like a abject disaster if they open the season with 2 of those guys starting at right guard and right tackle.
All right, now let's talk about T'Vondre Sweat, because this was another case that I kept seeing the clips pop up in my feed. Literally like taking photos before this wedding on Friday, and I'm off to the side because I'm the brother-in-law basically. So I'm not in the wedding party. They're all doing their thing, and I'm over at the coffee shop just scrolling Twitter, and I'm seeing all these clips of T'Vondre Sweat. And man, I don't know how formidable those bags are that they're out there punching, but that hand swipe just pops every time he hits it. I mean, it's one of the things that I saw on tape too, is just how violent he was with his hands. But Brian Callahan went on to say that he moved well, looked like the guy that we saw on tape. I mean, T'Vondre Sweat just out there, off to about as good of a start as I think you could imagine.
Yeah, I mean, listening to some people that were mad about the draft pick, I think a lot of people might have thought, well, he's gonna be out there like asking for Treylon Burks' inhaler halfway through the first practice, but he by all accounts got through the practice just fine, did well. Look, the guy moves. He has rare movement skills for 366 pounds. Like 366 pounds is rare on his own. Like that is rare, period. But 366 that can move like that is just like unheard of. I mean, we are talking about like a Vita Vea type guy when it comes to that big and can move like that. Now, I'm not saying he's necessarily going to be Vita Vea, but I think he's got that kind of skill set. And man, I mean, the way he, even like the agility, like the ability to like weave in and out of those bags and really like turn the corner and then, finish with the swipe down on the arm and everything. I thought he just moved extremely well. And I wish people would, I hope people stop asking about his weight at some point. Honest to God,
man.
Cause like, I felt bad for the kid, to be honest with you. Cause look, I mean, I know that's going to be a big story and you've got to ask, but at some point, like this dude knows, he knows where he has to be in his weight. I thought he, tried to do a pretty good job of answering that and saying like, look guys, I know what I need to do. I know that this is an issue, but I'm just not going to talk about it. I hope they leave that alone from here on. And don't ask him about food and stuff like that. I kind of think it's a weird thing that we're allowing to go here.
Yeah.
The way we're talking about this like 22-year-old guy's body in that fashion,
It's tough, man. I mean, at a certain point, like, don't you have the answer you're looking for? I mean, do we really have to keep pounding the table over this issue? I don't know. I would say if T'Vondre Sweat is looking for alternative methods to get the weight down, he could go to the Chili's in Smyrna, Tennessee, and get an order of the Big Mouth bites, their little sliders, and then boom, food poisoning. 8 pounds in 2 days. I'm down 8 pounds in 2 days. This is the first that I've actually gotten out of bed since watching a football show on Monday. So
the food poisoning weight loss plan. I mean, it is an option. It is an option if he's trying to get down to 350 and get into that Hall of Fame shape. Let's go.
I like him a lot, man. I like the first two picks, and I know there were, cameras all over these guys. I asked you the same thing about JC, but as far as Tavondre's rookie minicamp goes, overarching themes on the performance that you'd take away from what we were able to see?
I think he looks like a guy that is certainly worthwhile as a draft pick, even at
Yeah,
38 and everything like that. I mean, like, again, just rare combination of size and speed and athleticism in that body type. In the hands, like, again, and you mentioned it with the bags, hitting the bags, like he has pop in it, but they're also quick as hell. Like,
yeah,
he has lightning fast hands, and that shows up on tape. And the fact that all of that stuff that showed up on tape translated obviously to those. I mean, and we just saw a couple drills, right? So we won't get carried away. We aren't going to talk about Caleb Williams not looking like a rookie at all because he's doing big routes or whatever. But I think those things are encouraging. No conditioning issues. I think the flexibility too, like some of the drills, he's on the ground, he's getting into his stance. He has really good flexibility for that size. Like he's not a big guy that's like, well, because you see some big guys, and you see this in high school football a lot, right? Where it's just a kind of a guy that's just overweight, not really an athlete, and he
hmm
just kind of leans over and into his 3-point stance, and it's just not an athletic position. T'Vondre Sweat is not that. He is
yeah,
down. He has his legs, bent. He is cocked and like ready to explode. So like that to me, those are just the differences. Like there's just some physical things that he's able to do that almost nobody else on earth can. So I'm really excited to watch both those guys because yeah, it's someone who loves watching grown men overpower other grown men. I mean, this is what the sport is, right? At the end of the day,
yeah, yeah.
God, the Titans got two of them that are just teed up to be some of the most special at doing that thing.
I'm not saying that I necessarily think this, but part of me wonders if part of the issue with Tavondre Sweat from a perception standpoint is how conditioned we've become to expect like Aaron Donald body types at defensive tackle.
Yeah,
Because Aaron Donald's out there training with knives, slinging knives all over the gym, and he's got like a six pack, but he's built like a brick shit house too. So like just this stocky dude, but you don't see like the defensive tackles that are built like Tavondre Sweat too often anymore. So part of me wonders if maybe that's why some people are so freaked out about the pick, but I don't know. I would just say watch the tape, which is the most encouraging thing to me is that you have Brian Callahan saying he looked like the guy we saw on tape. There were some questions about his conditioning in between the end of Texas's season and the NFL draft. There's, raised eyebrows when he didn't weigh in at the Senior Bowl and that sort of thing. But for him to come out on the field over the weekend and basically, I don't want to say put that all to bed, but he looked like he was in good enough shape to play football. I think that's the most encouraging part of that. And I'm like you, man. I can't wait to watch these guys go at it this summer. I mean, this is like the definition. You could not get any big meteor men slapping meat than JC Latham and Tavondre Sweat. It's awesome, man. I like it. We
the
do have
meat's gonna slap so hard in
it
July.
is.
I
It
mean,
is. We got a wild card in the chat though. Z Dean chimes in with a player we haven't talked about. Cole Spencer will
okay.
win the right guard position. Book it. That is quite the prediction there, Z Dean. I like Cole Spencer. He was a guy that the Titans met with, and Zach ran his numbers in his Titans fit rankings, whatever the algorithm he invented, and he's like, "Hey, you need to watch some tape on this guy." So I did. Thought it was pretty good. Have you gotten a chance to watch any of them? Do you think he's got a shot on the right side of the line?
I have watched some. I will say I think he needs to add some strength, right? Like I
Yeah,
think he's clearly good enough athlete. Like in the combine or not combine, the pro day testing and all that stuff that he did more than confirms that. Like he tested like a freak athlete, honestly, for his a guy of his size. Definitely has some length issues, and I think just needs a little bit more power, a little bit more anchor. But he's definitely intriguing and has a tool set that, I think, again, with a guy like Bill Callahan is worth exploring. And you'd love to see someone with his physical skill set be able to make the roster or at least make the practice squad and be able to hang around and get coached up for a little bit. Because I do think there's a ceiling there that is starter, kind of player if it can be reached and they can, do some stuff with this new strength and conditioning staff that they need to be able to show that they can do.
Yeah. Have you gotten a chance to watch the kid from Liberty, Xavier Gadlin, I think is how you pronounce his name? I watched him at the Shrine Bowl and nothing really popped about him other than he's a big dude. That's kind of a road grader, but I see both of those guys as maybe practice squad candidates, but probably a long ways to go before they're going to make any real noise. But Zidane, we got you on the books. We got you on the books for that one. Cole Spencer went in the right guard position. That's a hot take right there.
I'm casting my lot in with Sadiq Charles right now. I have a feeling. I have a feeling.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on the whole upgrade Daniel Brunskill train though. Like there was a little bit of hate flowing in the group chat. Like, oh, Mike wants to get rid of Daniel Brunskill. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I can't let Mike drown in this by himself. I'm like, no, I kind of think they need to upgrade Daniel Brunskill too. And if Easton's watching, he can chime in and back me up on that. I wasn't going to let you go down by yourself, Mike.
I appreciate that. I appreciate someone having my back because Lord knows Zach will throw me to the wolves.
Yeah, he will. Jaquan Jackson, a name I wanted to talk to you about because Braden talked about him on a football show on Monday, saying that they were primarily using him as the returner out there. And I'm curious because I've kind of thought with the new special teams rule, it's more or less just a run play. Maybe you want somebody that's a bit stockier out there, not as small, shiftier between the tackles kind of player. And I don't really see Jaquan Jackson in that role, but do you think it's possible that that I'm just overthinking this thing? Do you think Jaquan Jackson should be the returner? And are you expecting him to be the guy when the season starts?
I'll be honest, on kick return, I still think I'd rather see Tony Pollard or Tajay Spears take that role just because I think that skill set's going to fit better because I think it's going to be more like a run play, just the way that it's set up. I think you're going to want somebody with a little bit more strength to be able to run through arm tackles and make guys miss in confined spaces. Now, punt return, I think Jackson, his skill set probably fits better in that. But to me, I just think one of the running backs probably takes the kick return job. And I think you're going to want that because it's a real play now and it's going to be important. It's not just somebody going up back there and signaling for a fair catch on like 9 out of 10 plays.
I would think so too. And that's where I had Dylan Johnson penciled in. I'm like, this is how he makes the roster. Dylan Johnson's going to be the one that's out there returning kicks. But now, man, my credibility is going to take another hit if they just have Jaquan Jackson out there in both situations. So I don't know.
It could. It'll be interesting. Yeah, I think that Jaquan Jackson making the roster, he needs to be the punt returner. That needs to be his role if he's going to make the roster. Because I think there's going to be like one punt return / backup slot guy that is going to be the 6th or 7th wide receiver that makes the team.
Yeah. Zach Woodfin and his staff of apparently there's like triple the number of strength and conditioning people out there on the field for rookie minicamp, deeper stretching session, a little more time getting ready for the practice. Any thoughts or observations there?
It's hard to say because like we just didn't know what the previous strength staff was doing for the most part. I mean, obviously I think they've thrown more bodies at it, which is good. I think that always helps. But I love the fact that they've got these guys out here talking to the media, being a little bit more front and center. Because I think it is a huge part of, it's a war of attrition in the NFL season when nobody knows that better than Titans fans at this point. You've got to be able to keep your guys healthy and performing at a high level over a, grueling 17 game, probably soon to be 18 game season. So I like the fact that they've got this group more front and center. I like that Zach Woodfin's out there giving us real insight as far as some of the stuff that they're measuring as far as like asymmetries within, players' body composition and strength and stuff like that. I love that he's given us real, insight as to what they're doing and why they're doing it. The transparency with this coaching staff as a whole is so much better and welcome, just from not only from a media standpoint, which, yes, it's nice that we have like stuff to talk about from the coaches rather than just the blah coach speak that Vrabel tried to shove down our throats. But also just from a fan standpoint, like fans want to know what the team is doing. They want to understand at a deeper level, what are they doing with these guys from a training standpoint. I think it's great insight for the fans. So I love that they're more open, and I love that Woodfin apparently is going to be able to speak to the media and give some insight there, which is exciting. So now whether it works or not, we'll see. Because I can't speak on what Frank Perrano was doing. They may have been doing symmetry testing and all this other stuff too. We just wouldn't have ever heard about it,
I think that's the big takeaway for me too, is that we are getting a little more transparency and insight into this regime and how they operate. I mean, for fuck's sake, we're on here talking about how much the Titans stretched before rookie minicamp. We're talking about green dots and blocking sleds and all that this offseason. So I think it's just a glimpse into more information that we have access to with this regime than the previous one. And like you said, it's not meant to be an indictment of the way Mike Vrabel ran camp or anything like that, because we don't know what the results are. But the fact that they're going to give us a peek into this is what's interesting to me. By the way, I kind of like Jake's idea in the comments. Traylon Burks should return kickoffs. Jaquan Jackson should be in on punts. I think that's an intriguing option there. What do you think about maybe potentially moving Burks to one of the return positions?
I've thought about it, and look, if you could tell me that Traylon Burks was going to return to his like Arkansas form, I'd be all about that, because at Arkansas he was tough as shit to tackle. He obviously has great straight line speed. We haven't seen him break hardly any tackles at the NFL level, and until he shows me that, I don't know. I kind of want him to focus all of his energy on being the best wide receiver 4 that he can be and running some damn good clear out routes for Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins and Tyler Boyd. So, I can see where you're going there. I don't think it's completely crazy. I just think that skill set of him being like a run after catch guy just has not translated. Now I'm shocked it hasn't, because it usually is pretty much a linear, like if you break tackles in college, you can break tackles in the NFL kind of thing, but it has not come to pass with him for whatever reason. So maybe if that comes back, I could see him getting in the mix.
Andrew says he's with you on the Pollard or Spears on kick returns, but he said that Mike pushed back on him when he brought it up.
Zach pushed back.
Zach, yeah, sorry. Zach said he didn't want Pollard or Spears on kick return. Do you remember that exchange at all?
I don't, but I don't know. I guess if they just had one of Pollard or Spears and then the backup was, Julius Chestnut or Hassan Haskins or Dylan Johnson or whoever, I'd be less inclined to put, that starting running back there. But since you've got basically 2 that are interchangeable, I totally don't mind if you stick one of them back there and use them in a play that, by the way, injury risk should be lowered, which is the whole point of them changing this whole kickoff, approach, and is more of an impact play. So, like, I think it's the change in the kickoff makes it more important to me to get a guy that has some actual skill back there. So to me, it makes more and more sense that it's Pollard or Spears, who both have done it before, right? Like they're not new to kickoff return. They've both done it at the college level and at the pro level at times. So I'm totally on board with one or both of them seeing some reps back there.
Shane Ray and William Jackson III get invites to rookie minicamp on a tryout basis. Either of those guys do anything for you?
Once upon a time, I liked William Jackson a good bit. I really don't mind just the dart throw of having them out there, seeing if they've still got anything. I think Shane Ray plays hard, and look, the bar's kind of low at that edge position as far as what you might actually need. And I think he made the Bills roster at one point pretty recently, either last year or the year before, and then got injured or something like that, and has now come back from that injury. So I think I'd probably put more eggs in the Shane Ray basket as far as getting an actual roster spot out of this, but we haven't heard anything about either of them potentially signing. So It may be that they're just both kind of shot. I think both those guys are in their 30s now. So yeah.
Yeah. Do you know how like that stuff typically works? I mean, is this a thing where you get a tryout and then a couple days later you've got a contract or at least like an invite to training camp or something like that? Because I mean, we're pretty far removed from rookie minicamp if that's the case.
Yeah, and I don't know when the next phase of OTAs is, when the veterans join the rookies, because I would imagine it's a pretty quick couple day tryout maybe kind of thing, and then you would want them on board before the veterans join the rookies at the next phase of OTAs, which I'm not sure when that starts. But
it's sometime after Memorial Day. I have the dates somewhere, but not handy, of course, which I should have since.
I'll see what I can find here.
I asked you this question. In the meantime, any thoughts on them adding blocking tight end Nick Vannett, a guy that has been a bit of a journeyman tight end, but seems to fill a role that we thought they would fill at some point this offseason, considering Chigakonkwo is kind of more of your dynamic playmaker type. Josh Wiley's a good all-around tight end, but they needed the blocking specialist. It appears that they went out and got him.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, the OTA date, so they're back together May 20th and 21st next for the next phase of OTAs, and then mandatory minicamp is June 4th through 6th. So
that's what I was thinking.
Certainly, you would want them there before mandatory minicamp, but I wouldn't be surprised if you try to get them on board in the next 4 or 5 days so they can be here when the whole group gets together for the first time. As far as Vannett goes, I expected them to sign somebody. I kind of thought Tyler Croft might be the guy. They're kind of interchangeable. I mean, Vannett, Croft, 30-something, have been around the league for forever, journeyman types, bigger guys, he's 6'5", 260, built more like a Jeff Swaim, a Craig Stevens, if you want a more positive name to correlate with that. I don't know that he's the blocker that Stevens was. But they need somebody that's going to be in that role, and this will be a capable body, capable of sliding into that spot that Titans fans will inevitably hate because he doesn't catch passes. So, and he'll be taking away snaps from Josh Wiley and Chigakonkwo at times. So
yeah, we'll be fighting over Nick Vannett in October on this
100%. And I look forward to it. Yeah, all the angry tweets about why is Vannett on the field.
I know one thing though. I'm going to keep my blocking tight end first touchdown scorer bets going because I won some big money on. I think I won the Jeff Swaim bet once and the Michael Pruitt first touchdown scorer bet. I won 2 times, but a $1 parlay, they paid out $60 each. And I'm like, yeah, we're gonna keep it going with the Nick Vannett first touchdown score this fall. So you have a fantastic piece on what to expect out of Will Levis in 2024 up at paulkuharsky.com. I don't know about you, Mike, but I've kind of been on this optimistic train with Will Levis for quite some time. And people are having this debate, and sorry, I'm getting distracted because Braden's calling me. So I don't know if he realizes that I'm on the air.
Is he angry about the content? What's going on here?
I don't know. I'm getting a phone call. Getting a phone call from the boss while you're on the air is not
it's disconcerting.
Yeah. I don't know if I should answer this or not. No. Okay. Hung up.
Put him on the air.
Yeah, we'll just put him on the air. Okay. So I've been pretty optimistic since the season ended that Will Levis, maybe not going as far as to say this is the franchise quarterback for the next 10 years, the Titans got him, but at least feeling comfortable enough in his performances that I would say, yes, he's a guy worth investing in to go for it with this window being his rookie contract. You go for it, you do your best to build around him. And unless he takes a massive step backwards, you don't abandon ship with him. I've felt confident in that all offseason, but this national narrative has been out there that Will Levis just stinks. I think it might have been the 33rd team that had him ranked as the 32nd best quarterback in the NFL. I mean, the haters are out there, but I thought your piece was really, really well done. And I wanted to give you the floor to kind of explain your thoughts on Will Levis moving forward his sophomore season.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have not always been Will Levis's biggest supporter, right? Like, I was not a fan of his in the draft last year. Thought he
that's
was
funny because I've never said a cross word about Will Levis before. I've always been in support.
Well, we'll have to fact check that one. I'm not sure about that.
Oh, you don't have to.
We I was not the biggest Levis guy coming out. Look, the skill set, undeniable, right? Like everyone knew he's 6'4", he's 230 pounds, he's got a huge arm, he's got a quick release, all that stuff. The physical skill sets, boxes checked completely. I think all my questions really with Levis had to do with like, can he be a playmaker out of structure? Like you need so many, quarterbacks to do, at the NFL level. Can he also just play within the timing of an offense? Because I think his tape was at Kentucky was kind of weird because I thought he was late with a lot of stuff. I thought he, just missed reads at times, more often than what you'd like to see. But then he also didn't create a ton out of structure. So like it was kind of this weird, which was why I was down on him. It wasn't. I get the physical skill set and everything, and I get that he's a tough kid and a smart kid and all this other thing that, he checks a lot of boxes. But watching him play, I just did not get that feeling of like, okay, this is clearly going to translate to the NFL level. Like I did with, CJ Stroud, who, to defend my quarterback evaluation a little bit, I had his QB1. I had CJ Stroud as QB1. I was like, look, this guy does it all. He's super accurate. He's got touch. He's got feel. He's got all this other thing. I just didn't see all that with Levis. Now, then I watched him as a rookie. I thought he made a lot of plays out of structure. And I posted a long clip of some of his best throws. And a lot of them are, him making a play in a muddy pocket or him just making a play, having to move off of his first read or kind of move to create a throwing window and do that kind of thing. There was a lot more of that in his rookie year than what was on his Kentucky tape and what I expected to see, which was positive. And then you throw in the other context of like, look, this dude was under pressure at an enormous rate. And I have the numbers in that article, but, second in the NFL among quarterbacks with at least 250 dropbacks in pressure rate. He was under pressure 44.6% of the time, I believe it was. Fields was number one at 48.8, but he also held the ball for 0.6 seconds longer on average in the pocket than Levis did, which is an enormous difference. I mean, that's a 63% increase in what you're asking your offensive line to hold up for. So, Levis was under pressure quicker than really any quarterback in the NFL. And that's not a surprise to Titans fans, but just context, from the data to back that up. And then he had receivers that couldn't separate. There's a really good graph from, I think it's Throw the Damn Ball on Twitter, which is a great handle, by the way, that shows the separation grade for, correlated to quarterbacks by their receivers when the ball was thrown. And Levis and Bryce Young, who, the other quarterback who had really a terrible situation last year around him, were right next to each other. Now, the difference is Will Levis produced a lot more than Bryce Young did as a rookie with a similarly bad situation. And he also pushed the ball down the field. Like a lot of people point to his completion percentage being sub 60 and want to say he's inaccurate. I just don't. I went back and I watched all of his tape over the past week from last year just to kind of like, this was my first time going back through it since the season ended, which obviously I watched during the season, the live games and watched the tape during the week and all that. But this was my first time going back to it and just watching it all in sequence like that. He does not have an accuracy issue to me. Like he may not be a, pinpoint accurate passer. I don't think he's like a top 5 accurate guy in the NFL, but it's not a problem. Like his accuracy is not a problem for me. The problem is that he had the highest ADOT of any quarterback since I think 2019 at 11.
Even bombs.
He was just chucking it downfield. He was throwing bombs. He was playing an extremely risky, difficult level of, high level of difficulty game last year. And I think that's going to come down. If you look at Brian Callahan last year, Joe Burrow and Jake Browning were 37th and 41st out of 41 qualifying quarterbacks in ADOT. Like, so they are not pushing the ball downfield nearly as much. There's a lot more quick game that's going to be involved. And, he'll have better receivers. He should have better protection with a remade offensive line and Bill Callahan. And even if the protection isn't, great, more quick games are going to help him be under pressure less. So I just think that there's a lot of reasons to look at his season last year and say, yeah, he showed an awful lot for a guy that was in about as bad a situation as you could have been put into as a rookie quarterback. Not to mention the fact that he didn't get a lot of training camp reps. He was not expected to be the starter. They didn't build the offense for him. He just got kind of thrown in there mid-season and was asked to make it work with Nick Westbrook-Akina as his wide receiver 2 in the worst left tackle situation in possibly the history of the NFL. So, I just think for what he showed in those games, and it was just flashes, but still, like, what he showed is enough for me to think, put him in a better situation. Let's see what we got, because there was enough there that you could really sink your teeth into it and feel like, all right, this guy could be a dude in a better situation.
How much of that hero ball that you mentioned him having to kind of cut back on a little bit, how much of that do you think was due to his own inadequacies, and how much of it do you think was the situation that he was in just being so terrible?
I think it's a combination for sure, because I do think that they wanted him to push the ball down the field. I mean, they called a lot of those, play action shot concepts and stuff like that, which I think was, because he does have a big arm. He throws the deep ball well. Like, that's stuff you should take advantage of with him. But you can't overdo it. And I think sometimes he did overdo it. Just, he loves the deep ball. And there's examples that you can point to, the Steelers game when he takes I think it was 4th and 3 or something like that. He takes the shot deep to Treylon Burks down the sidelines when Kyle Phillips is open, right over the ball for what would have been an easy conversion. Like, that's the time you got to coach him down to say, take the layup. It's okay. We don't have to score on every play. Like, I like the fact that you're having to rein him in. And I think somebody used the term of like reins versus spurs. Like, you want a guy who needs the reins, not a guy who needs the spurs, which is, I think, what Marcus Mariota was. He was a guy that needed the spurs. He needed like aggression coached into him, which I think is a tougher task. But I think Levis, you need to rein him back a little bit. You cannot have him playing at an 11.1 ADOT next year. That's not a sustainable way to play quarterback in the modern NFL. So you're going to have to rein him in a bit, but I think you can do that. And I think with a coaching staff and with a wide receiver group that maybe he'll trust a little bit more, maybe that happens. So yeah, I'm excited about it. Where are you sitting on the Levis excitement meter?
Dude, I'm stoked, man. I honestly was stoked. I haven't gone back through and rewatched the tape, but I watched the tape as it happened through the season, and I can remember it kind of being thrown off a little bit at the end of the season when people were still like, oh, well, I don't know if the Titans should be investing in Will Levis. Like, what have we really seen out of him? And I'm over here watching it like, no, I get it. Like, you've just got to, like you said, a guy that needs the reins, like, you got to kind of choke him down a little bit and get him to stop heaving up so many deep balls so recklessly. But as far as the accuracy, that wasn't an issue for me. I was really surprised by that. I really like his athleticism, but most of all, I love his toughness. I love his competitive spirit, like the screaming on the sideline stuff where he'd like just about bowls over Tim Kelly after in the Miami game. Like, that's the stuff that, like, you look at it and, the capture of Big Jeff saying that damn Will Levis can play, man. Like, that's the stuff where you see it and you're like, okay, this is a guy that can be a lightning rod for this team. He clearly has the arm talent. He clearly has the physical talent. The things that you have to work with him on are all stuff. It's all stuff from the neck up, where it is, like you said, like, coach him to take the easy layup every once in a while. So I saw that as just, okay, this looks like a guy with tremendous physical talent. This looks like a guy that can be a leader for this team. And it looks like it's just times that he just looks like a rookie trying to make a play because he's in a terrible situation. He's fighting for his life on every down behind that offensive line, and he doesn't have receivers that can separate and really make plays for him. So when you start adding pieces around him, like J.C. Latham, Lloyd Cushenberry, Calvin Ridley, now Tyler Boyd as well. Like those are ingredients for success for Will Levis, in my opinion. And if he is another leap of faith, so to speak here, but if he is as smart of a guy as everybody said he was coming out of Kentucky, then we shouldn't have any hesitation about believing that he can master this offense and kind of tone down some of those inconsistencies in his game. So, I'm willing to say I think I was dead wrong. Well, I shouldn't say I was dead wrong in my evaluation of Will Levis coming out of college, because my big thing with him was his sensing pressure. You mentioned it too. Like there's a lot of his game that he feels like a little late on. Yeah. And I always felt like watching him at Kentucky, he was just a little late to take off and evade the pass rush. And I thought, oh man, if he gets in the NFL, those are going to turn into sacks and it's just going to be disaster. And for what it's worth, I did still see several of those plays his rookie season, but it didn't matter. And I thought, okay, well, I guess maybe it doesn't matter. But I will say I'm at a point where I can admit that I think I was wrong to doubt him as much as I did with the whole #NeverLevis campaign and all that. I'm willing to walk that back because I think this guy is somebody that you've got 3 more years with him on the rookie contract. You go all in, you push your chips into the middle of the table. And I think this is a guy that you can win with if he irons these inconsistencies out.
Yeah, and two more things on Levis for me. So one, like this is a weird deal for me, because if you watched Levis last year and watched what I watched, and then you watched Anthony Richardson, like Anthony Richardson had a similar tape, I think, to Will Levis. Like their skill sets are a little bit different. Like sure. Richardson's clearly a better athlete, stuff like that. But Richardson also sub 60% completion rate last year. A lot of his stuff was very much Will Levis in a very small sample size. Like the dude took 84 pass attempts, right? So super small sample size. But we've got like the Athletic Football Show out here saying that they would put him like, I think it was like 13th or 14th in the NFL among quarterbacks right now. And people are like, should the Titans even be trying to give Will Levis good receivers? Like there's just this huge split in opinion where like, I think it ultimately comes down to like pre-draft opinions of those two players and people sticking by them, because nothing about what Will Levis showed at the NFL level last year should make you feel like, compared to what Anthony Richardson did or what Bryce Young did, there's no difference. Like if anything, I think Levis was better than those two quarterbacks, but really I think it was very close with Richardson, and I think both of those guys were clearly better than Young. And nobody's gonna bash the Panthers or say the Panthers, what are you doing trying to give them good receivers? It's just a weird argument. It's a weird discussion, I think, nationally with this whole thing. And I think it ultimately just comes down to like confirming priors on Levis. Sure. And then I also have to share this comment because I love this way it's phrased. This is exactly how Will Levis's accuracy is. He's not a witch nipple quarterback, but he will get the job done. I think that's perfectly said. Yeah, he's not going to be able to put it on your right or left nipple if you tell him, but he's going to put it on your frame and you're going to be able to make plays. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight that from Glory Day Sports over there.
Man, I don't know about you, but I feel like at least twice in the past week, I've seen some film analyst pop up on my Twitter feed showing clips of Will Levis and saying like, actually, I don't think Will Levis is a bad quarterback. And I'm just curious if these guys that have been slamming Will Levis all offseason, are they just now getting around to watching the tape or what?
I think so. I really think so. I think that's it. I think there's a lot of content to create for some of those guys, and the Titans aren't necessarily at the top of the list for most interesting teams. And Will Levis's, I guess, reputation wasn't necessarily the most intriguing. Everyone wants to watch Richardson. Everyone wants to watch Young. All this stuff. But I definitely don't think. Yeah, I don't think people have really paid that close of attention to Will Levis, who are just now coming out and saying, maybe he's not terrible.
Yeah, the Titans are just that team that you get around to in May and June, I guess. That's the crux of the issue. The Titans added Sam Somerville, former scout of the year, to their staff. And I know you wanted to kind of touch on the changes that are going on in the scouting department now, which we're hearing a lot of because those contracts are apparently centered around the draft and nothing else. So it looks like more overhaul. This looks like a big name for Rand Carthon to get, which kind of makes me wonder if like maybe people in the football community are looking at this Titans job as a little more a little better than I think the national media may be giving it credit for. But just touch on the scouting department, the changes that are going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think they've added some relatively big names. Obviously, AJ Highsmith, I think was with the Bills, was a national scout for the Bills. Is now going to be the new director of scouting. So they're shifting a lot of things under Rand Carthon, under also Robinson and Brinker. So like these are kind of category kind of additions, but these are the guys that are doing the actual work for the most part. Like these are the guys that are on the road, going to see these guys live, putting together the scouting reports, all this stuff. I think Highsmith, by all reports is a guy that's highly thought of among scouting community. His father was a Patriots executive. He also played at Miami in college and is a former player. So, a guy that clearly has been around the game his whole life. And then you go out and you get Somerville, who winning that Scout of the Year. Like that's they put out a poll out of all the active scouts. So they vote on their peers basically. And he was, listed as one of the best, or actually listed, I guess, as the best scout among those scouts polled in the NFL last year. So like, definitely a big addition, and he's coming on in what they're saying is going to be a national role, so probably some sort of national scout there. But Sam Somerville, AJ Highsmith, pretty big additions to the Titans scouting staff, and I do think ultimately that it probably comes down to, I think Rand Carthon's just well liked among the NFL circles. I think he does do a really good job of creating relationships, building relationships, those kind of things. And I think that matters when it comes to, hey, I've got the job, do you want to come work here? Because they know what kind of environment Carthon's gonna build and what kind of place that's gonna be to work working under him. And I do like the vibe of, and I've been critical of Carthon at times for like some of the press conference stuff and things like that early on, but I think his relationships and his ability to build relationships is important. And I think, to Amy Adams Strunk's credit, I think she keyed in on that pretty immediately, and is a big part of why he was hired, more so than like his scouting for the Niners, which I'm sure was good. I think it was the ability to build relationships and build teams of people that want to work for you and want to do well for you and will be motivated to do the best job they can for you because they like you, So I think that's where Carthon's real superpower is. And I think we're starting to see it come to fruition here. And I'm intrigued to see what differences that ends up creating and how they scout and evaluate and ultimately bring in players.
I'll tell you what, it must be May because we are talking about the scouting department and strength and conditioning and blocking sleds and all that.
Good stuff.
I don't know how you feel about this, Mike, but I feel like Zach would be proud of us that we've gone nearly an hour so far and haven't even mentioned the schedule release at this point. But it sounds like reports are coming out that it's going to be the Bears week 1, which would be exciting, obviously, because Caleb Williams is already a Hall of Famer. And oh gosh, I'm already blanking on the name. Roma Dunze is running, tremendous comeback routes and all that. But
that's right.
Does the schedule release do anything for you?
Somewhat. I mean, I find it interesting from the standpoint of like, I like to be able to look at, how many national games do they have? Where's the rest fall? Like, where does the bye week fall? Where does the Thursday night game fall? Are there any weird road trips? Things like that. There's some interesting elements, but ultimately, like, we know who they're going to play. It's just the order, and what TV channel they're going to be on, and how many, nights I'm going to be up late trying to write something after the game or something like that. So, it doesn't do a ton for me, to be honest. I haven't been super keyed in on all the rumors and leaks this year. I have in the past, but it's not super interesting to me.
Every year I do this thing where I sit down and I look at the away schedule and I'm like, okay, where would be the coolest game to travel to? And then I just inevitably never travel to any games.
I do the exact same thing. I'd talk about it with my wife. Like, I think last year we were like, it'd be really cool to go to Miami for that Monday night game. And then we were like, yeah, it would be. And then we never talked about it again.
Yeah, that's the same with my wife, except this past year she was pushing really hard for London. And I was like, babe, I don't know about that. We still gotta make all these other trips. I don't know if it's gonna be in the budget. But Mike, it looks like you froze on me. So I don't know if we're live on the air. Yeah, the clock's still going. That is all that I have. I don't know. I'm going to text Mike. This is live broadcasting right here, folks. Let me text Mike. Mike, you're frozen. I'm sending us home. I don't know if it's going to get us off the air when I leave. Fantastic stuff here. All right. Well, let me give a shout out to Bluegrass Beverages. Thank you all for tuning in to Football and Other F Words. Thanks for chiming in the comments. And be sure to tune in next Wednesday at 1 p.m. Central as well. I'm at Stoney Keeley on Twitter. You can follow Mike at Mike Herndon NFL on Twitter. Check out all of his work at paulkaharski.com. You can check out all of my work at sobrosnetwork.com and stackingtheinbox.com. We're expecting Zach back next week, but you can follow him, follow the show at FWordsPod on Twitter. And until next week, congratulations, you've just been effed. I think that's how it goes.